Hey everyone, it's your favorite care activist here again, Matthew McKenzie, raising awareness on unpaid carers. Now, this time, I'm going to lecture on when to complain as a carer. Now, many of you out there are caring for someone with long-term illness, and I'm going to specifically aim it for carers for someone with mental ill health. Might already have an idea on when they want to complain, and that's probably down to not receiving services or not being heard when you're trying to care for someone and you want a bad outcome. That's all fine and good. But there's a big problem from what I've seen. The nature of caring for someone is to put others first. And if this even might be professionals, but mainly you're going to be putting your loved one first, to cared for. And because of the nature of that role, many carers just take it. They think, oh, well, you know, this is something I have to put up with because I'm caring. And there are many other reasons, actually, why I'm doing this particular lecture. I mean, we're told to complain, but it's not so clear when you should. So it's going to be a slightly long lecture, to be honest, because there's a lot more to complaining than one feels, and I will also include steps as well. Let's continue. Knowing when to complain as an unpaid carer when you're caring for someone with mental illness. But before I continue, as usual, it would help me out if you want to subscribe to my channel. I'll try and release content as much as I can during the week. And this might not always be on carers. Sometimes I'll promote awareness events, usually mental health, equality, diversity, that type of thing. But a lot of the focus will be on the situations unpaid carers face when caring for someone with long-term ill health. And also, if you think the video is useful, do give it a like, and also comments. I like to see comments in the videos. So, when to complain as a mental health carer and why? I know when to complain about mental health services that are treating you poorly. It's not just down to the cared for, but yourself, to be honest. It actually can be challenging. I know most of us are not in a rush to complain. We don't want to rock the boat. We know fully well we're going to have to work with the mental health professionals, want to be part of that team. But there will be situations, unfortunately, when emotions run high and you want to prioritize the well-being of the person you care for, like anyone else out there. But there will be this situation that you will have to complain. There may be no other way around it. Another thing also is it's essential to advocate for yourself as a carer. Again, you're not really taught these things. I know Carers UK actually has an excellent pack on self-advocacy. And even if that might be tricky, then you can always try and shop around for carer advocates, usually at carer centres. And if you're lucky, there might be advocates at mental health services. The point of advocacy, obviously, is to make sure you receive the support and respect you deserve. But there are some indicators, though, in regards to help you identify when it might be appropriate to lodge a complaint. Well, a good example here is lack of respect and those being dismissive towards you. What would that mean? Well, if you feel constantly dismissed, belittled, disrespected by mental health professionals, it's a sign that services are not really meeting your needs as a carer. And obviously, you can't just complain because of that. What's so important is evidence. So, if you feel this is happening, And it might not always be the case. It's really tricky, this one. Document it. Document specific incidents where your concerns or input was ignored. And I'll give some examples. You're trying to raise the situation about how your loved one's coping, the person's coping at home, if they're living with you, and you see a decline in their health, and you've written an email and you've got no response. You phoned and no one's picking up the phone, and then you're invited to a meeting. A meeting to update, I suppose, about the situation the one's going through. You speak to the mental professional or the consultant psychiatrist, and you bring up the subject that you've emailed them, and they said, "Oh well, I didn't get that." Well, they probably did. You might have a read receipt on that email, so therefore you're not getting any response. You feel ignored. And to make matters worse, the consultant psychiatrist might say, "Look, you know, I'm the professional here, and therefore I know what's going down, and I'm afraid, you're going to have to listen to what we say." And that straight away is a lack of respect, and therefore you might start thinking to yourself, okay, I've tried the best I can. I'm going to start documenting specific incidents. The situations also, if staff professionals might shout at you, they might be having a rough time of it with their own caseloads, and they've reached that situation where you've asked for something and they just don't have the time, and they shout. And it's the worst scenario, I would think, if that happens. But again, document it. So this is fairly common all around in regards to when um, you decide you're going to have to complain. And usually if there's failure to provide adequate support, but what does that mean? And as you can see, the image I've put up there is actually a professional, putting their hand up in front of the carer's face, and the carer's shocked. It doesn't have to be physically like that, but when a carer is blocked or confidentiality creeps in, um, this is almost linking to inadequate support. So to services, they don't provide you with information. I did mention confidentiality. And when I say confidentiality, that is how much you know in regards to the person that you're caring for. And it could be situations that's linked into the cared for's care plan. Now, a fair bit of the time, family care may be included. There are times when the patient rightfully says, no, I don't want them involved. But then the other side of it is nothing's followed upon the patient, whether they want the family or loved ones involved, and the staff feel like, oh, okay, we're gonna be extra cautious. So what we'll have here is that you're not provided with any information, no resources or support. You're not referred to any support systems. You don't know your carer's rights, and anything that's essential for your caregiving role will significantly impact your ability to care effectively. The action really, again, is note down any requests you have made to the mental professionals or even social workers, social social care, on requests for information support that was unaddressed or inadequately met. And I can give you one example. You are involved in the care plan. You're given a care plan for the person you're caring for. They're too ill to respond to it, and the care plan is probably only 2 pages long. So you're not really sure the outcome, and you're thinking, hang on, this information here is missing. Doesn't address your needs, doesn't address their needs. There's no referral. So basically, the service is sort of saying good luck and goodbye in some sense. So you want to be noting that down. Another good example, I'll give another one. Let's say you're unhappy with the care plan. When the cared for is still too unwell really do much about it. So you're contacting the patient advice liaison service, so that's PALS. Yet there's been no response. You've contacted them for a week, you followed it up the next week, no response at all to the email. So again, another example on failure to provide some form of support. Poor communication can be a common one to complain about. Again, some carers will just not are just not sure what that means, and will just take it on the chin and they won't complain. But if you were going to complain, then what would that sort of be about? There's a good indicator, really. Like if there's like a communication, I've mentioned this several times now. Treatment plans, or the other word would be care plans, or if there's changes in care and it's not even passed on to you, or you're not consulted about it, or critical information, and I'm saying critical information about the person you care for. It can hinder your ability to care for the person living with mental illness or even advocate for them. So again, it's keeping those records of communication issues, missed appointments, someone's not turning up to those appointments. And a good example is the social worker for the person you care for not really turning up, or not doing check-ins with the patient, unanswered questions, you're ringing, you're emailing, not responding, and you're waiting and you're worrying, and there's lack of follow-up. So yeah, these things, again, you want to keep records in regards to what I've mentioned here. So it's poor communication, and as you can see, the image I've drawn up, unanswered question, and the care is left with jigsaw puzzles because no one's telling them what needs to be done. So you're trying to play detective, to be honest, trying to put the puzzles together. The person who's in the bed is the mentally unwell patient or loved one. With the professional, not really, in a distance, they're keeping the care at the distance. This one, unfortunately, has become more common these days. Services are stretched. To make matters more tricky is trying to get access to those services. So if you find it difficult to access services, whether it's long waiting times or appointment availability or refusal, actually, carers and their loved ones could be outright refused in regards to being accommodated on their concerns, then it's time to voice your concerns. Again, track any delays or barriers that have prevented you or the person that you care for from receiving timely support. What makes this really tricky is it's not always easily known what is timely support. Make matters even more tricky. You're not just dealing with the mental health profession, you're actually now beginning to deal with doctors or GP services. And ever since the pandemic, it has become even more difficult to get access to services or even see your doctor. And if that becomes the case, it's time to start thinking about, look, start tracking those delays, and also think about complaining, to be honest. But you've got to prepare for it. You've got to bring that evidence up. No one's inadequate attention to safety. This is perhaps one of the most dangerous situations a carer can find himself in. What do I mean by that? Well, if you believe that services are compromising the safety of the person you care for, ignoring crisis situations, or not addressing urgent needs, it's critical to raise your concerns, and also safety of yourself, to be honest. And you're on a time limit for this one. It's not the best situation to be in if no one's getting back to you regarding a crisis situation. I'll give an example. Someone going through suicidality, um, and there's been a history of it, and yet they've gone missing, and they're known to services, but they're ignoring your requests. So you're literally on a time limit, and things might turn out all right, and your loved one might have been found. But then what can you do about this? How can you prove that this is something you're going to be complaining about? Again, it's all about evidence. As a carer, you have to document specific examples of safety concerns and any attempts to address them that were unsuccessful. I'll give another example. We can have someone who's absconded from their section on an inpatient ward, and the mental health services were likely to say, listen, I was trying looking for the person that's absconded, that's escaped. It's been 2 weeks now, I'm afraid. We're just going to discharge them. And to make matters more difficult, the person's still very unwell. They're wandering the streets. You don't know where they are. They don't know where they are. It's time to complain, really. And this points back to they're not doing their duty. There's a specific word for it. It's gone off my mind now. But they're not performing their duty of care when it comes to a patient that's at risk. Unresponsiveness to feedback. One of the worst things, actually, a mental health services is not taken up on, because I believe this is one of the best ways services can learn and can adapt and change. So you provide, actually, you've been fair. You provided constructive feedback about care processes or service quality, and I've seen no changes or even any acknowledgement. It might actually indicate a systematic issue that even needs to be addressed. And you can see the carers has fed back and not received anything and have become really annoyed about it. Again, it's keeping those records of the feedback provided and the lack of response or the lack of any changes. And I've always sort of said to carers, if you can, feed back. It's not always about complaining. Feeding back is also a powerful way to promote change in mental health services. There might be situations, of course, carers get just tired of feeding back, but you have to try. That's my motto. You have to try. Obviously, if there's no follow-up, then you can tell by this lecture, it's time to complain, but you have to keep records as well. This is one that's quite difficult to complain about because there's many things that can affect a carer to make them feel overwhelmed or burnt out. And it might not always be down to the mental health system, but this time, as you can see by the image I've put here, what the person is saying is we can't help with that when we all very well know that it's their responsibility to help. But they might use very clever ways, one of them being jargon, to say it's not our responsibility. This can happen, actually quite a fair bit. So services fail to consider your needs as a carer. You're not, I think one of the biggest examples is you're not even identified as the carer. And because of your caring role, you now begin to feel overwhelmed, unsupported, or ignored. And this is when it's time to start speaking up. So you're going to have to reflect on how the service is impacting your well-being. And again, it's about the documentation. Document any specific instances. The biggest one is, I can't speak to you, or we're not allowed to speak to you. There are also very clever ways they can start ignoring carers. One of the worst ways is culture of mental health services could be a situations where they start labeling specific carers as too involved or complainer when you're clearly not. You're being fair. When you have that culture, uh, then it's time to start documenting things. Some things are going to be hidden, not easy to spot, but again, it's up to you to feedback in order to avoid being overwhelmed or burnt out. What I mean by that, it means that you're providing so much care and attention to the person that you're caring for that is gone beyond that situation where you're not caring for yourself, and that's now impeding on your rights, not just as a carer, but as a human being. You're not allowed to be put upon in a sense where services say, well, you need to do all this, and we're not telling you how to do it. And we're not going to respond to the situations you face either. Conflicts of interest is an interesting one. Basically, it's if there's perceived conflict of interest where the professionals are just not prioritizing the needs of the person you care for, or even your own well-being, and that's a serious concern. And what would you need to? Well, it's obvious you're going to have to start gathering evidence of any actions that seem to prioritize other interests of the patient and the care well-being. And it could be a good example, I suppose, is be more interested in the patient's finances, like being really quick to put special measures or focus on capacity issues. And there's plenty of other alternative methods to look into other things that could be helpful for the family as a whole. Very difficult to spot this one because there can be situations where you're not even told of your rights, so you don't even know when to complain, but there can be conflicts of interest regarding this. I'm now going to look into the steps, and the very first thing when it comes to complaining is you must document everything. Even if you think it's going to be really brief, the key things really is it's going to be dates, times, and names of the professionals that you've interacted with, and specific conversations or instances. Now, the most important rule here is you don't record people. You never do that. But what's useful is when you do attend any meetings, it's always helpful to take a notepad and a pen. And if you're not sure, take an advocate with you, take a friend, and document, what's going on. There might not be anything to complain about, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have dates and times and the conversation. You never know when these things might be useful in future. Look at the second step. So the second step is raising your concerns informally. So you want to start by discussing your concerns with professionals involved. You don't want to drop straight into conflict. There's always a different, diplomatic way to solve the issue. And sometimes it could be the NHS professional's manager. And it could always, even before then, it could be just a direct conversation. There might be a misunderstanding. There might be a way for resolution. And might not even need to get to complaint. So, just raise your concerns. They might even learn from it. This is a strange one, I'd say. It's almost backwards at certain NHS services. Not all carers are going to know this sort of thing. Only veteran mental health carers. If you're new to the role, you won't really know what a carer strategy is or a carer's charter. Many mental health services should be having them. And if you can familiarize yourself with, specific complaints process of mental health services or facility, then that's a good pathway that you can use to complain. There might even be templates flying around. So use that You look at the complaints process. Is it fair to begin with? Do they make it really difficult to complain? Note these things down. And if they have a template, use it to fill in the complaint form. When making that complaint, be clear about your concerns and the resolution that you're seeking. And also include your documentation. What I've always keep saying it time and time again for this lecture, it's the key thing. So that way they can check it and they can say, they won't be saying that, oh, you're lying about this. You have the evidence then. Provide context on what outcome you'd like to see. And I've said with that evidence, it will support your claim. The tricky one to this is when making a complaint, you don't want to be sidetracked. You don't want to complain just for the complaint's sake. You want to make your resolution clear, be on point, get that sorted, and just get on with the role with the best support you can get. So when it comes to complaining, be clear on what you want. Don't just complain and be done with it and complain again. Now, this is one of the most important things that you can do if you're fairly new to the carer's role. If you feel uncomfortable about making a complaint, consider contacting advocacy groups, advocacy support that can support yourself and the person that you're caring for, and they can offer guidance and may assist in that process of complaining. And this could be down to your local care support centre or your local mental health advocacy support. It could be a Rethink Mental Illness site or community centre, or Mind might have a carers support group. And it's worth reaching out to them. And there may be others, it doesn't have to be those national ones. There might be others floating around. Complaining is only the start of it. After filing that complaint, follow it up to make sure it's being addressed, and ask about timelines for responses and potential outcomes. So what you don't want to happen is that you spend all your time gathering that evidence and then submitting that complaint and nothing happens about it. So it's important to follow it up and still keep gathering evidence. There might be situations where you will think to yourself, I'm going to need external help. And if your complaint isn't resolved, then you might go through internal channels, but there's situations where you just can't, they're not responding. So it's time to escalate. And it could be to external organizations, like health ombudsman or regulatory bodies. And when I mean regulatory bodies, I'm talking about the Care Quality Commission, the CQC. Another thing also is you got your local health watches. And you even have MPs. That might be also your last resort. Do not go straight to your MP unless you want to understand what you're in for in regards to complaints. MPs are very, very busy. And the reason I'm also doing this lecture is to give you the power and the empowerment to try and seek a resolution for complaining. It's not advisable to speak to your MP about everything. There's got to be a situation where carers are empowered to try and resolve things. But there might be a time when you just can't, and the services are just not responding. So it's understandable that you're going to want to be seeking external channels if you do not get any resolution or response. Out of all of this, caring is a situation, is by its definition, by its nature, can be tricky and difficult, and to make matters even more taxing. You're not only trying to battle for your loved one, you're more likely to be battling the mental services. And this can take a toll. So it's important to start taking care of your own mental health throughout the process. Yes, seek support from peers and mental professionals if you can. And this includes other mental health carers that's been providing care and support for many years. Speak to them. And they might even help you in order to complain, and might suggest all sorts of things that can help you look after yourself. So going through this lecture, people might be thinking to themselves, oh yes, it makes it sound so easy, or look, I can't even be bothered, there's so much to do as it is already. So why does complaining matter? At the end of the day, carers have rights, but to be on point, this is meant to empower you as a carer. I want to empower you on speaking up and also reinforcing that important role you play as an advocate, as a carer. This emphasizes the importance of your needs, your rights, and your experiences in the caregiving process. And you know what? Complaining actually holds the system to account. Mental services should be held accountable for their practices. And I've always said this, it may lead to improvements, whether you complain or feedback. And these improvements can be for yourself or for the person that you're caring for. And lastly, it improves care quality. So your feedback can help identify systematic issues or failures that need to be addressed. Ultimately, improving service quality for the future carers and patients. And we never know who's going to be next in regards to caring for someone with mental ill health. So summing this all up, remember, as a carer, you have the right to voice your concerns. You have the right to advocate for yourself and the person you care for. Seeking improvement for mental services not only benefits your situation, but it can also lead to positive changes for others in similar circumstances. And I feel so important, really, the last note is we must recognize our rights as carers, as mental health carers. The big issue really is, are you told about your rights? And knowing your rights is not enough. We have to exercise them. The unfortunate situation is, are we supported in doing so? So I do hope this lecture has been of some help. There's a lot more to it than what I've mentioned. It's very brief, unfortunately. It's a lot more in regards to building up the confidence to complain and being supported to do so. Very tricky, but given time, I'm sure going through this lecture, this can be useful to those out in the field trying to do the best they can for those that they love, who are no fault of their own. You're trying to care for them and they're struggling, really, with mental ill health. Anyway, I do hope this lecture has been useful. If you feel it has been so, just give it a like, and I'd like to hear what sort of things you would be complaining about. Put that in the comments section. Hope to see you soon, and remember, if you're caring for someone living with a long-term illness, remember to take care of yourself. See you soon.